the franchise can still shut its critics up in Fast X Part 2. But for that to happen, several things need to occur in the ending of the 11th mainline Fast Saga movie. To be fair, the one actual street racing scene in Fast X was fun, but while the last biggest stunt involved cars, it wasn't really a race. And if the Fast Saga is going to end on a high note, then its last, most memorable stunt should be somehow related to street racing. After all the ridiculous things this franchise has pulled off, the same old tricks just won't do. This final stunt needs to collide traditional street racing with the ostentatious, physics-defying approach of the last movies. And Fast and Furious already has everything it needs to make this happen, beginning with the new villain Dante Reyes. In the first half of Fast X Part 2, Little B could survive, only for Little B and Abuelita to be kidnapped by Dante, and he could force Dom's crew to design a car to compete in Dante's epic speed racer-like demolition derby in the third act. Dante could even live stream the event for the world to see, as two teams literally race for the fate of Abuelita Toretto. However the final stunts go down, we also wouldn't mind Dante's crew acting like Immortan Joe's war boys from Fury Road. Fast X Part 2 could certainly benefit from George Miller's action-driven approach to storytelling. This may all sound crazy to the uninitiated, but if there's one thing that the Fast Saga's loyal viewers and harshest critics can agree on, it's that everything must end with one last epic, campy, over-the-top street race, preferably with Dom ignoring the laws of physics. Whatever happens in the beginning and middle of Fast X Part 2, the third act needs to be a historic contribution to the racing movie subgenre. In fact, Fast and Furious may be the only active franchise that can pull off something like this today. It's not just about blowing everyone's minds, it's about securing the legacy of Fast and Furious as an action and street racing film franchise. And speaking of legacy, this brings us to another non-negotiable for the ending of Fast X Part 2.
You don't turn your back on family.
At this point in the franchise, most of the main cast members have uncertain fates, and that's fine. However, in no way can Fast X Part 2 end with the deaths of either Little B or Abuelita Toretto. Both Dante and Dom's crews can die in a massive fireball in space for all we care, but leave Lil B and Abuelita out of it. At the end of the day, this franchise is about the one thing that truly matters, so while everyone else in the cast is arguably fair game for the Reaper, the youngest and oldest members of the Toretto clan must live on. Part 2 could even set up the biggest tragedy and actually kill Dom in the third act. But should that happen, Little B and Abuelita should be alive to mourn Dom and those that gave their lives to protect the family. This way, whatever Dante does to Dom's crew, things can still end on a positive note. While the franchise is known for cliffhangers, Fast and Furious has honed the art of the happy ending for over 2 decades. And the only way to satisfy both longtime viewers and hate watchers is to give them exactly what they want and expect from Fast X 2.
I mean, it's very honorable.
On that note, however, this brings us to a long-running franchise trend that shouldn't be anywhere near the next sequel. After Luke Hobbs and Dom Toretto found common ground in Fast 5, villains becoming part of Dom's crew has been a franchise staple, but this can't cross over into the sequel. We like this soap opera twist as much as the next viewer. However, Ames can't just change his mind about helping Dante in Fast X Part 2. It was great when Hobbs and Shaw did it, and Fast X pulled off Cypher's heroic turn as well. Admittedly, it would be hilarious if the same thing happened to Ames, but enough is enough. Franchise detractors will have more than enough bullets and dirt to throw on the sequel the moment it comes out, so it's time to let this third act trope die. If anything, the Fast and Furious cast already has too many good guys in the roster, and this brings us to our next point about how the sequel should end.
No way.
We all know there's a possibility that Jacob somehow jumped out of his car right before his big Fast X sacrifice. Yet as much as we love this character, Dom Toretto's not-so-little brother needs to stay dead. This also applies to every other Fast and Furious character who supposedly died, from Brixton Lore and Hernan Reyes to Dom's dad, Jack Toretto. Giselle's surprise return in Fast X was cool, but that should be the last of these near-magical resurrections.
Well, after Giselle died, I didn't know what to do.
Don't worry, Han, she was only on vacation. That said, if Fast X Part 2 really is the final chapter of the Fast saga, there's at least one character who needs to return.
Hey, thought you could leave without saying goodbye.
There's actually a simple way to bring back Brian O'Connor, and it doesn't need to involve using AI or CGI to recreate the face of the late and beloved Paul Walker. Instead, Fast X Part 2 can just recast Brian with either of Paul's actual brothers, Caleb or Cody Walker, and whichever actor gets to play Brian in the sequel, the character must survive the ending of Fast X Part 2. As Vin Diesel himself said, "I couldn't imagine this saga ending without truly saying goodbye to Brian." And this would be the best way to give the character that proper goodbye, honor Paul Walker's legacy, and risk no controversy related to uncanny valley-looking CGI. Indeed, Fast X Part 2 simply can't end without explaining and fixing Brian's long absence. He can't just be the guy who shows up for barbecues, but not for when the crew actually needs help. Moreover, Brian and Mia Toretto would be the perfect couple to take care of Little B after Dom and Dante's final showdown.
Salute me, familia.
The Fast Saga needs a big sacrifice to cap things off, and the only one that would be big enough for the occasion would be the actual death of Dominic Toretto. Fast X Part 2 is the perfect time to drop this bomb. We've been following Dom's story since 2001, and in most of these films, Dom has defied death to save his family. So in order for the ending of Fast X Part 2 to actually feel different, Dom must make the ultimate sacrifice to protect his family and crew, his only consistent goal ever since the franchise began. Moreover, Dom should have no choice but to sacrifice himself in order to defeat and kill Dante Reyes. Dante may be a new addition to the cast, but just like Dom, his perfect ending would be in the third act of the next movie. Right now, Dante is inarguably the greatest villain the franchise has produced.
You are absolutely right.
But that could get derailed if Dante survives the sequel. If the Fast and Furious wants to give viewers an ending that is simultaneously unexpected, controversial, and satisfying, Dom and Dante need to die together in a last blaze of glory.
I'll see you soon, Dom.
And let's not forget the epilogue. Apart from the mainline story of Dom and his crew, the Fast Saga needs to have a proper ending for the agency, the organization responsible for the crew's global misadventures. And for that to happen, Mr. Nobody must appoint Tess as his permanent replacement. Whether Mr. Nobody dies in Fast X Part 2, Tess must not only survive, but should also take her proper place at the top of the agency. And it's not just because we want Brie Larson to have more screen time. By putting the agency back in the hands of the good guys, the Fast Saga can set up strong foundations for future Fast and Furious spin-offs. Whoever survives among Dom's crew, Tess will need them in tackling the next big threats to the safety of the world. As head of the agency, Tess could lead Ramsey, Tej, Roman, and Han as a new smaller team of tech and driving experts. The agency could even form a black ops team of femme fatales composed of Cypher, Letty, and Giselle.
What time do they open?
They open the same time as I pulled this trigger.
Part 2 may very well be the last film in the Fast Saga, but if the agency is in good hands, then the franchise would have a bigger, better springboard for possible spin-offs. So what do you think? What else should or shouldn't happen in the ending of Fast X Part 2? Tell us your thoughts and theories in the comments, and keep watching Screen Rant.